Krakowski join us for a series of 3 shiurim on Shmita. Rabbi Haber verified that Rabbi Krakowski is one of the most respected names of Kashrus in Eretz Yisrael, and it is to that we are very honored to have him speak to us tonight. We'd also like to thank the Bursting family for the sponsorship of this shiurim, and we look forward to this shiurim. Thank you. Krakowski.
They even put they left the safer for me to speak from. Tremendous coverage what they come to such a community, Mavak Shitayro. Start with a brief comment about this topic of Shmita. Shmita is something which is considered, in the middle of writing all sorts of articles on Shmita for different publications, and back and forth with the editors, and they ask to clarify different points. And they say, it's a topic that we're not familiar with at all. That's really the only thing difficult about Shmita. Shmita comes around only once in 7 years, so between 7 years it's not relevant. You don't think much about it. You don't become so familiar with it. When it comes around, it's all of a sudden, oh my goodness, what do I do? But the truth of the matter is, Shmita is not more complicated. We have Shabbos every week. Shabbos is far more complicated. It's 39 malachos. Shmita does not have 39 malachos. There's a lot more shilos that we deal with on a daily basis in all sorts of different areas of halacha that are much more complex. The only difference is that Shmita comes around once in a sabbatical cycle, and it makes it something that we need to familiarize ourselves with. So hopefully this set of shiurim should serve to help familiarize ourselves with the various issues and topics of Shmita. It's actually an extremely appropriate topic to be talking about right now when Eis Tzara Yaakov, when it's a period of time with a lot of worrisome occurrences happening to us. And I want us to share with you a story about Shabbos. Afterwards I'll explain why that story is very much so apropos to Shmita. There was a Lubavitch Shaliach in Michigan, and Yitzchak Meir Kagan, and he had, aside from being Lubavitch Shaliach, he was also a rabbi in a state penitentiary over there. That was for very high security state penitentiary, but it was for white-collar criminals. And one of the things that he did, he gave him weekly shir there, but he davened there every Yom Kippur. He left his Chabad house, and he would go daven in his prison every Yom Kippur. So, as Yom Kippur was coming towards a close, he was right about to start Ne'ilah. He got up and he gave his Ne'ilah sermon, his Ne'ilah drasha. And as he gets to the end of the drasha, he tells them all, I want you all to put down your heads now for a moment and to think about a mitzvah, something that it tells us to do, a commandment in the Torah, that you have not kept thus far, and you're going to start keeping now for this new year. So he finishes the Ne'ilah services, blows the shofar before he's able to turn around, even there's no minion left for Ma'ariv. Down his Ma'ariv Yechidos, puts away and starts collecting the various machzorim and all the materials around. And as he's finishing this cleanup process, in walks in one of the inmates, Dave. Dave says, Rabbi, I want you to tell me about Shabbos. Okay, what do you want? She says, well, that was the mitzvah that I accepted upon myself, was Shabbos. And I know nothing about Shabbos. And Kagan was caught in a difficult position here. On the one hand, he doesn't want to discourage him from keeping Shabbos. On the other hand, he's very worried how on earth is he going to explain the Shabbos, a regular achas, in just a moment, to somebody who's never dealt with Shabbos before. And perhaps, if he does manage to convey at least a good chunk of Halachos Shabbos to this fellow, he's going to push him away from all of his adherence to Torah mitzvahs that he might somehow one day do. Michoser Brera tries to say, maybe choose a different mitzvah. Shabbos, Shabbos is a little bit of a complex mitzvah. Maybe something else you should start with. She says, no, Rabbi, it's the only thing. I didn't know what a mitzvah is. All I was told was that the Shabbos is like the Christian Sunday. So that's all I know. I was bar mitzvah the only time I went to a synagogue once before in my life. And that was on the Shabbos for my bar mitzvah. That's all I know about Judaism, and that's what I decided I'm going to keep. You can't find some sort of book. This goes back 35 years ago or so. He doesn't know what to do, but he's going to look. He starts searching through. He goes home, starts searching through his library to find a book about Halachos Shabbos. Sure enough, he pulls out of his Svarim Shrankin one sefer, one book about Halachos Shabbos. Many of you might be familiar with it. Rav Shimon Eider's guide to Shabbos Halachos, two-color cover. And the debates doesn't know what to do about it. Now, Rav Shimon Eider, I remember Rav Shimon Eider when I was as a kid. I grew up in Sharon, Massachusetts. After my father was successful in putting up the Eruv around town, so I brought Rav Shimon Eider to check the Eruv to make sure it was kosher. But it was, more of the traditional yeshivish type of style posik, and the book was good for somebody who had some sort of yeshiva background, something like that. But it gets to the complexities of Halachos Shabbos, secretion of like Michalei, secretion of like Ichbaslei, if it's something that you don't care about or that you dafka don't want, all sorts of things, all sorts of finesse points in Halachos Shabbos. But has no choice. It says it's the only thing I have in English. You gotta bring it to him. So he brings it to Dave on Tuesday when he's about to give his shir, his weekly shir there on Jewish thought. Dave takes the book, he thanks the rabbi, and the next week on Tuesday Dave comes back and he's got a whole slew of questions for the rabbi. He started reading through the book, he has all sorts of questions, this, that. The rabbi's amazed. Okay, something seemed to work. Comes back the next Tuesday, and again, Dave's got a whole slew of questions. The next Tuesday he comes back, and the Rebbe's already getting used to this whole give and take. He's starting to enjoy it. He's developed a relationship with one of the inmates, a strong relationship. He's going somewhere with this guy. He comes in on Tuesday, no Dave at the shir. So he starts asking the other inmates about Dave. So they said, well, he's no longer in prison. They sent him home. Baffled, says, go ask him by the administration, go ask him the officer. He goes to the office, speaks to the chief warden, and he says, we just started a tag program, the federal prisons, and which is now it's used very frequently for people under house arrest, right? Similar to like the dog fences, but it beeps if they go over. It has some sort of tag, and they know exactly able to track him, GPS, whatever, however it worked exactly back then. And it was a pilot project, and we were ordered to have 2 of our inmates, and we had some sort of random selection process, and Dave was chosen. It had to be from a certain category, but Dave was chosen to be one of those 2. He says, do you have a number for him? Can I get in contact with him? He says, sure. Gives him a number. He says he shouldn't be anywhere else. He should only be at home pretty much. Gives Dave a call, and he says, Dave, what happened? He says, Rabbi, you won't believe it. So you know that book that you gave me for Rabbi Eider? It's a wonderful book, and in the introduction to the book, which I didn't read right away, but I read it after the first week you gave it to me. It says in the introduction there, it talks about when the Jews were in the wilderness, that if they would have kept 2 Sabbaths, they would have achieved their ultimate redemption. But it said there was some Jew, he had all sorts of convoluted reasons, but he went and he cut down some wood or something like that on a Saturday, and because of that, they lost it all. I said, that's amazing. But I bet if it would work for a whole entire nation, it would work for me. Now, I started reading through this book, and it was very complicated. And I said, I don't know if there's any way that I'll be able to do this. And then I said, I have a different idea. Maybe I won't do anything on Shabbos without consulting the book. Before I do it, I'll go through the book and I'll make sure that what I'm doing, the book says is okay to do. So I basically sat in my room and I did close to nothing one Sabbath. And then the next week, the same thing. And on Monday morning, they called me into the office and they told me about this pilot project, and I was selected through random selection, and I'm free to go home. So, Rabbi, it's amazing. Now Dave is already retired. He lives in Israel. He has children who live in Israel that are Shomer Shabbos, that are living in Kyle even. And the rest, as I say, is history. Now, what does this have to do with Shmita? Shmita is Shabbos ha'aretz. And the Torah tells us in the Klalos that we read twice in the Chumash, the curses that will befall us, Chalila, if we don't adhere to Ritzayin Hashem. Az tirza arz is shapsei sel, that after we're going to get regurgitated Chalila from the land, and then the land is going to be able to rest all the different Shabbosos, all the different Shmitas that when the Jews were living here, they didn't allow it to properly rest. It's going to rest because it's desolate, but it will rest. What does Shabbos represent in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That's shiurim upon shiurim upon shiurim that can be talked about. But in a nutshell, it's the crescendo, it's the epitome of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a moment of utmost unity between us and Hashem. Klal Yisrael is the Kala, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Chassan. What happens by Shmita? Shmita it's the utmost moment between Klal Yisrael, Am Yisrael, as one unit with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our home. Shavu Banim V'Gvulam in Eretz Yisrael is our home. It's the house, it's the Yichud room with us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a year of unity, of a Shana Shlema, a full year of unity between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our home. And it's the epitome of Klal Yisrael's relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Perhaps it's part of the reason why the Gemara tells us that Ein Yisrael and the Golan Al B'Shviyas, that it's right after Shemitah is going to be the Geula, because that's what it's all about. The real unity between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shemitah represents the Geula. B'schus that we're going to be nigal, the merit of adherence to Shemitah. Even if Shemitah nowadays, we're going to discuss, according to almost all opinions, is rabbinic. So all the more so, it's a relationship that we're creating. It's something just very appropriate for the 3 weeks. I'm going to mention it in Kinois, it's mentioned in Tikkun Chatzais. And it's psukim in the Nevi'im that when we were exiled from Eretz Yisrael, we stopped by Kevarach and we davened. So Rachel Imenu went up to the Bezin Shamayla and she cried, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells her, Mi koilech, mi bechi, ve'inayich, mi dima, ki yesh sachar lefulasech, v'shavu banu l'gvulam. That the schar, that in your merit for the fact that you cried, Klal Yisrael is going to come back to Eretz Yisrael. So Chassam Sofer asks an unbelievable question. And he says, what do you mean? The Geula Asida was around before Rachel Imenu davened for it. You see it throughout the Nevi'im, not just by this passage, but something which ultimately will be redeemed. It's going to happen one day. We'll be back in Eretz Yisrael. So what was the schar? What did Rachel Imenu achieve that we didn't have beforehand? That one day we'll come back. So one day, that was always promised. Says the Chassam Sofer that one day we'll have the opportunity to come back to the home before the Geula, and we'll have the opportunity to take part in rebuilding that home. That's what Shmita is nowadays, when it's so to speak only rabbinic, is our taking time to rebuild that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our home. So it's an amazing schos that we have, and it's something which is really mikareves as hageula, something which really speeds up. And to give an overview of Shmita, we'll start with what's forbidden. What is Shmita? What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? What's the boundaries of these Shmita halachos? So the Torah forbids certain things, when it's biblical at least, which is you can't sow, you can't plant your field, you can't harvest your field, and you can't plow. There's two different types of harvest, because there's harvest of grapes, there's harvest of other produce, and this. But bigadol, those by and large, those are the things which are forbidden during Shmita. Chazal came along. Now, it's also the Torah tells us you're only allowed to eat the fruit. La'achla, it's for the sake of eating. Therefore, you can't do schara with the fruit, that's a machlokes. It's a matter of contention between the Rishonim whether doing schara, whether using it for commercial purposes is an issa d'oraisa, is forbidden biblically, or whether it's only prohibited by the rabbis. But the essence of that halacha, that it's for the purpose of eating, not for any other purpose, that's definitely hands down biblical. Chazal came along and they added on to all these halachos. They said, because it says that we can't work the land, so they said whatever would be a malacha relevant to working the ground on Shabbos is going to be aser midrabanan, unless it's for the sake of your eating from the produce. Because during Shemitah, the Torah also tells us that it has to be like produce that even the tzvi and the ayol, even the wild animals, should be able to eat the fruit, should be able to eat the produce of Shemitah. For your domesticated animals and for your wild animals, that they should be able to eat the food. So now we have malachos that are forbidden, things that are forbidden midoraisa, things that are forbidden midirabanan. We have things that you're only allowed to use it or do things with it in some way when it's for the sake of eating it, and you can't do anything else which is not for the sake of eating it. So that's step number one of Shemitah. Now there's other parts of Shemitah that we're not even going to discuss in this year, which is hashmatas ksafim, the fact that if you lend money to somebody before Shemitah, comes the end of the Shemitah year, and pag tokef, it's void, nothing to do about it, he doesn't have to pay it back, you're not allowed to be toveh, and there was, the hill was misakin, something which was wonderful, that no such thing anymore, you make a prosbal, and of course he has to pay it back. Fine, that's for a different type of shear, nothing to do with kashrus of food, and so we're going to stick to the Shemitah of the arts of the land, which only has to do with the produce. Now, what happens to the fruit, to the produce, which is Shemitah produce? So it obtains something which we refer to in halachic literature as kedushas shvius, that it's sanctified with some sort of shvius, some sort of sabbatical sanctification, which means that it has a whole set of halachos how to deal with it, because it's not just any ordinary food that you do whatever you want with it, or you eat it in whatever way you want. It has its own set of halachos. There's also discussion amongst some of the Rishonim, about the fact that it's kadosh, that it has extra holiness to it, so there's something special about eating it. And the Ramban goes so far as to say perhaps that there's even a mitzvah in eating such produce. Not just that, like that, it's not just that it's like Rebbe Shishirayim or something like that it does, but it's a mitzvah, it's a chiyuv to eat it or something like that. So, what is the set of halachos for Kedusha Shvius products? So we start off by saying, what does the Torah tell us about it? It says, la'achot, for the purpose of eating it. So because it's to be eaten, I can't do anything else with it other than consume it. So I can't make some sort of other things out of it. If you have some sort of thing that you can use to make some, I don't know, a toy or fabric, something like that, it can be used for multiple purposes. Now, decorative purposes, I'm drying out corn, I'm drying out a gourd. Now, again, to gourds, it could be at a certain point in time that's already okay to do. But, bigadol, I can't take something which was meant to be eaten and now turn it into something that's not going to be used for purposes of eating. I can't, it's holy, so I can't desecrate its holiness. I can't just toss out the leftovers, say, I don't care, I throw it in the garbage, and because then I'm destructing it, I'm ruining it, and I can't do that because la'achal, I'm supposed to be eating. So over here, one of the big questions is, now, the apple itself I want to eat, but what about the peels? Maybe I peeled the apple. What do I do with the peels now? So there's actually different categories of what happens to the peels. Something like an avocado or a kiwi or something like that nobody eats the peels. The last time I said this to somebody raised that, said, "What do you mean? I always eat kiwi peels." Okay, so continue eating kiwi peels. But so something which nobody eats, that is no problem throwing out because it's not considered to be edible in the first place. Something which everybody eats, the way it's eaten is dafka with the peel, and you still peel it off. So then there's no shiloh. You have to treat that as kedusha shvius. I'll tell you actually a place where it's really nogea. People don't always think about it. The truth of the matter is it's not that nogea because we're going to get into something which is called svichim. And in all probability, this type of vegetable would fit that category of svichim. But let's say something like a carrot. Carrots, when you peel carrots, the carrots you buy are already peeled. When in the packaging plants for the carrots, they peel the carrots. What happens? The carrots dry out. By the time you get it, they stick in the refrigerators for 6-7 months. Carrots all grow. It's a winter vegetable here in Israel. It goes down the south, in the sand, and all sorts of stuff like that. And they keep it in the refrigeration for. They told me during Shmita they can even drag it out for about 9 months. So it's using stuff from the 6th year, dragging it out about 9 months into Shmita. So they peel them beforehand, because they dry out, and nobody likes the dry outside. But really, at some point in time, that was fully, even now, it's still fully edible. And what you're peeling off isn't carrot peel, it's already the second layer of the carrot. So it gets complicated because it's sichin, there's many vegetables. Even as kedusha shvius, you're not allowed to eat them because chazal made xera. We're going to get to that soon. But something where nobody eats, where some people eat the peels, some people don't eat the peels, or sometimes eat the peels, sometimes you don't, like apples. So that's already a bigger issue. What do you do with the peels? So in such a situation, we say that because sometimes they are eaten, you can't just throw it away. You have to let it rot on its own accord, so to speak. So the old-fashioned way of doing that was you had a shmita pach. You had like this little shmita garbage can left down your peasant, so you don't have to smell all the fragrances from the rotting fruit. And you put it in there to rot, and once it was rotted, then it's already not edible. And then at that point, you can throw it away. And you always have to have multiple such hachim, such canisters, such bins, because some of them are half rotten, so it's a shiloh. Is it already rotten enough that I can throw it out, or is it not rotten enough? And then I'm putting in something which is fresh, and I'm ruining it now because it's already getting mixed in with all that gross stuff that's there already. So you have to have a series of at least 2, likely 3 or 4 such things, and then you move it on. The truth of the matter is, Rashi Sternbach and many other contemporary poskim say it would probably be sufficient just to double wrap such produce and throw it out. My personal hargasha is, if it's something which is vadai kedusha shvius and you definitely shouldn't be throwing it out, so it's probably best to use the Shemitah Pach method. If it's something that is it's a shayla whether it has kedusha shvius or not, or it's a shayla whether it's something that could be thrown out or not, or something like that, so then definitely the 2-bag method would work. Additionally, if you know it's going to come to the takala, you're going to mess up with the whole Shemitah Pach thing because your kids are going to play around with it or whatever it is, or you don't have somewhere outside to keep it or something like that, and any other type of situation where it becomes complicated and difficult, it's probably also fine to use the double wrapping method.
If you put in the Shemitah Pach and the things that are rotting, isn't that increasing the new stuff? Isn't it going to rot?
So that's why you have to have a series of Shemitah Pachs. Don't just have one, unless you only dump things in once a week together or something like that. But assuming that that it's something you use on a daily basis and things rot at different points in time, so you have to have a few of them. Now that's only for something which is Kalash B'Kedusha Shvius.
Just to clarify, Rav Sternbach said on the Chasham.
No, Rav Sternbach says it period. It's also by Chala. Rav Sternbach says it's similar by Chala also. That instead of Chala, the Chala actually recommended to a lot of people as a lechatchila. This is an aside, because there's something which has become unfortunately very common amongst many people is that they freeze their challah until they have a lot of it and then they burn it together. And the number of shilas I've gotten from people, now it's mefurish action in Shulchan Aruch that you're not supposed to do such a thing. You shouldn't keep it because you don't want it to get mixed in with other stuff. Once you made a challah, it's usher to eat and it's treif for us, so to speak. So it's a disaster waiting to happen, and it's a horrible thing. I get shilas all the time from people that call it. My wife took out dough from the freezer, or my husband, whatever it is. Not a chauvinist. Whatever it is, somebody took out dough from the freezer, and either they thought it was pie dough, or they realized it was challah, but they thought it was from the challah that they froze to make next week's challah from, or whatever it is. And it turns out that it was their challah dough that they were saving to burn one day, I don't know, Pesach or whatever funny minhagim people have come up with. And that because of that they created all sorts of problems. So I always tell them, get rid of it as quick as possible. So if you're the type of person who takes it straight away, puts 2 pieces of aluminum foil under it and then sticks it on top of your stove top till it's burnt to a crisp and your whole house stinks like smoke, good, ashrecha. But if you're not, it's probably best to take 2 plastic bags, tie it up, throw it out, and know that you have a kosher home. Back to Shemitah. So now, what else do I need for it to be Kadosh B'Kedusha Shvius? Anything that grows? So no, it has to come from Eretz Yisrael. And it could be, according to many of the opinions, it has to come from Jewish-owned property in Eretz Yisrael.
Anywhere in Eretz Yisrael.
In halachic Eretz Yisrael, we're going to get to that. Okay, not necessarily Medinat Yisrael, in halachic Eretz Yisrael. And it's a question if it grew on non-Jewish property, if that's going to be considered Kedusha Shvius or not, if it's going to be considered Shemitah produce or not. And that's what's known as Nachri, which is something you'll probably end up seeing in a lot of the stores around here during Shemitah, is Nachri produce, non-Jewish grown produce. And according to many, it doesn't have Kedusha Shvius. Now, even if it does have Kedusha Shvius, they're allowed to sell it, and so even people who view it as being sanctified as Shvius produce will say that you can buy it from them, but then you just have to treat it as produce of Shemitah sanctification. Halachic Israel. So there's all sorts of different opinions about that also, which is important to discuss because it's something you're going to end up seeing in stores and things sometimes also. We'll have to see exactly how things pan out in the Shemitah. Things far down south, like Eilat, or like Kibbutz Yotvata, that type of area, are not halachic Israel. We just read about it in the Masais, Eilas, and Etzi and Gover, and how many people, especially if you go to a shul, a Haredi shul, and I pronounce things in Ashkenazis, so Me'elas and Etzi and Gover, not too many people put it together as Me'elat. But that's really what it is. And Yotvasa we also had. Now Yotvasa is clearly Eretz Edom. All that, it's not exactly clear who else it belonged to, but the point is it's definitely not Eretz Yisrael. That wasn't the Masa'is in the Midbar. That has nothing to do with Israel. Now, it could be that at some point in time, as Hashem will obtain the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, something like that, through Kibush Yachid, Kibush Mitzrayim. There's all sorts of Kibush that happen at different points in time. The things that had Kedusha Eretz Yisrael don't have now. Maybe Yarden, and that's one of the things we will discuss also, because the Haredis views anything that's on the other side of the Yarden pretty much all the way up, even like by Beit Shan type of area, as being considered what they call Arava Tzfonit. And the Minchas Yitzchak had one of the previous heads of the Eidach Haredis, he has a whole tshuva in his tshuva farm called the Minchas Yitzchak, where he explains that he does maintain that does not have a din of halachic Israel, and therefore the Eidach Haredis will certify it. One of the areas where they're much more lenient than many of the other Ashkachos, they'll certify it as non-Shemitah Prados because it comes from the Arava Dromit, from the Arava Tzfonit. The Arava Dromit, the southern Arava, is more like Yotzvat and those types of areas, where that everybody, all the traditional, all the regular mainstream Ashkachos, accept that as being Yivul Chutz La'aretz, as being foreign Prados, not very far away but foreign Prados, and therefore it does not have Shemitah sanctification. So the Golan, that starts coming to some of the questions about Me'ever L'Yarden, if it's all the way up, because then so maybe perhaps in the Golan Heights that's on the other side of the Yarden than it would be. Most opinions do view the Golan Halacha L'Maiser of Arba Chaser and Kulas, but only B'Tzeiruf. Bavram Dov not Shalazam, his son, Chaser and Kulas, but it's only when he combines it with other Heterim or things like that he's so on such things in the Golan Heights and things like that. Most poskim view the Golan Heights as halachic Eretz Yisrael, or at least most of the area where the Prados comes from. There's certain areas far out, that dip into around the border areas and things like that. But for the most part, or most of the Prados that we eat that comes from the Golan, the apples and all that type of stuff, and Eretz Bereshit, most of those types of Prados that they view as they view it as being Israeli halachic Eretz Yisrael Prados.
You mentioned that Beit Shan is south of Troy. That way the Haredis says not, and the Golan is?
No. I said that again, if you get to the Eidach Haredis, there's certain parts that they're more mako on what's the Arava Tzfonit. That might include some of the areas up there. So, but that's most Ashkachos, most poskim don't take such a lenient approach to those areas. There are some. So that's another thing that you see often during Shemitah is Yivul Chutz La'aretz, things that come straight up from Chutz La'aretz, like the pears or the apples that you're buying right now, maybe from Chutz La'aretz anyway. So such Prados doesn't start the whole Shiloh about Shemitah, and it's non-Shemitah Prados, and there's no Shemitah ramifications for such Prados. So the question is a very basic question. We said that you're not allowed to do commerce with Shemitah fruit. So how do you get fruit during Shemitah? Because maybe once upon a time when you lived in farming villages, so stay there, everybody, so one guy went to the other guy and got his apples, the other guy went to the other guy and got his oranges, or whatever, and it all worked out that you got everything you just went and picked it from your various neighboring farmers' farms, and you were good to go. But it doesn't work practically nowadays. So what do? So there's one basic system for things that are Kedusha Shvius, which is Otzer Bezdin. And Otzer Bezdin is a system as follows. Bezdin, Hefker, what Bezdin takes for itself, so to speak, still has a din of Hefker. So they're able to take in, they're able to control the distribution of it. Therefore, they're allowed to have emissaries of Bezdin go and pick the fruit and bring the fruit to any city or town, village around Israel and distribute it, and they're allowed to collect costs for that whole distribution process. In other words, for the workers in the field that pick the fruit, for the people who pack the fruit into the boxes, for the transportation of it, etc. So that people are making money, but they're not making money off the fruit, they're making money only off the services that they offered to bring you the fruit. And that's all controlled by Bezdin. It should also be at a lesser price, because otherwise you have to answer questions, because I need all those steps. When there's commerce involved also, you need somebody to pick it, you need somebody to truck it, to ship it around Israel, and somebody to sell it to you, to distribute it, and all the types of stuff. You need all those things also, plus they're making profit on the fruit, so if it comes out more expensive now, something's wrong with that system. So Bezdin has to carefully control the prices, and they need pikuach, they need supervision to make sure that they didn't do any malacha, anything which was forbidden to do to the fruit, so that the fruit should grow more plentiful, that it should be a more bountiful crop, that it should be more lush, less bugs, whatever it is, these types of things that you're not allowed to do. Pesticides is one of the rabbinic prohibitions during Shemitah. But so all those types of things you're not really supposed to do within a certain limitations. And certain types of things that just keep out bugs might be okay. Certain types of things though that actually kill the bugs or whatever it is, that becomes more problematic. Back in the days of yours, so they used to smoke branches underneath the trees, and that would drive the bugs away. So that's one of the things the Rambam says in the Mefurish, Mishnayos actually, that say Mefurish, that is forbidden during Shemitah from the rabbis. So the Otzer Bezdin is one of the big systems for providing Shemitah produce during Shemitah.
So the owner of the land gets nothing.
The owner of the land is usually appointed one of the Shlichim Bezdin for the whole picking process and that type of thing. So at least he'll have some money. He won't have as much money as during a regular year, but he has something to be able to at least get through the year so much that he doesn't have loss first of all, but he's able to let the fruit don't go nowhere, because there aren't that many people coming up to pick fruit. And if they do, they only allowed to pick enough for themselves and maybe for a neighbor or something they're going to give to when they come back to Beit Shemesh or Shalayim, wherever it might be. Remember, in last Shemitah, we took a tzimmer up north in Galil, and was walking back from where in the morning, and some farmer fellow that lived in this yeshuva where we went to the tzimmer rolled out his window and he asked me, he said, do you want to come pick in my orchards with your kids? I have plums and peaches, and I keep Shemitah fully. I was mafkir the land, it's a bezdin, nothing. I was fully. And he said, it is locked up, there's a key there, and there's a sign there with my number, and anybody who calls me up and asks for it, I tell them where I hid the key. So you can go and you can feel free to pick with your kids. I happen to have been the most delicious plums that I'm not a big plum person, and they were phenomenally delicious. And he told me, he said he thinks it's actually because he watered it less. That usually when he waters it so much and fertilizes it so much that the fruit are more watered down. He said over here, he said the pricks, the sugar liquid ratio was much higher because of the less watering, also the nothing to speed up the ripening process. So he said it was sun ripe, and those types of things you can't beat a good old Mother Nature. So if that's much to say, you can't beat Teva that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into the world. So
Does the basically buy the field?
No. The field, no, you can't buy the field. It doesn't belong to anybody during Shemitah. It's hefker. It's ownerless. Bezdin controls. They collect all the produce.
Walks over the basin and says, "I'm mafkir my field to you."
No. They subscribe to Bezdin to be able to be a shliach Bezdin. also nowadays, back in the days, this Toseftas will talk about similar ideas. That's where the whole Otzer Bezdin idea comes from. Rav Kook made the first modern day Otzer Bezdin. The Chazon Ish perfected Otzer Bezdin to be able to work more effectively for modern day society and pushed it very strongly. But the idea comes from the Tosefta in Shvius. And over there it talks about even forced type of Otzer Bezdin, where Bezdin saw that things were getting out of hand, people weren't adhering to Shmita properly, and they basically took over people's fields and took over, they didn't let anybody come in to pick, and whatever, these types of things, within certain limitations that they couldn't. But the idea is, actually the Otzer Bezdin contracts now, they say that anybody can come and pick. Even though Otzer Bezdin's picking the majority, but theoretically anybody can come and pick. And I remember also last Shmita, the following year, not this coming Sukkot, but the Sukkot afterwards, so to speak. So the last year Shminas, the Sukkot of Shminas, the Esrogim, because the period Hadar, so it's a year later, they were Kedusha Shvius Esrogim. So we went, I was still learning at the time in Brisk, and we went, I had just bought my first minivan, and we went and I packed in 7 guys, and it was a Mazda 5, so those back seats are barely really for kids. But we packed in cola guys, and we had a whole car full of cola guys. We went to Otzer Bezdin Pardesim, and we picked a surrogate from the Otzer Bezdin Pardesim. Nobody can stop you. That's, so they also, they charge you, because there's certain things they do. They don't do anything which is the real malacha. But on a surrogate, what makes all the black and stuff in the surrogate? The leaves, when the leaf, or there's also like thorn-like things on the esrog branches. When they lean or prick into the esrog, that's what makes all the blemishes. So to make a nice esrog, also the way it grows is how the gidul grows. So you want to have a nice esrog with a nice shaped head and clean and everything like that. So you need somebody to clip up the leaves. It's not a malacha because they didn't take the leaves off. All they did was clip up the leaves. And all they do is they tie the branch so that the esrog should grow on the right angle, so it should be even and nicely shaped. So for all those efforts, you still have to pay them.
That's not the same as smoking for insects?
No. It's not mentioned as a malacha. I left everything there. I didn't do anything real. Whatever it is, it's not mentioned as a malacha. So there's still certain things that they do. So they charge, a minimal fee, nominal fee, for their efforts still towards having kosher sort of feed away. Because otherwise, if you just let the esrogim grow wild, in thousands of esrog trees you're going to find some that are kosher, maybe even a few that are mahodr, but not a lot. So that's.
What's amazing is man hazeh. We want to eat Jewish produce, so to speak. That the farmer himself, he's just one of the service providers, or he's said that. I mean, how's he being compensated?
Okay, so
he's getting 100th.
No, because usually he's going to be a more primary person that puts in more effort, because he's not just picking the field. He has all the logistics. He knows when every mateh, when every area in the orchards is going to be ready to harvest. He's able to schedule everything. He's the brains behind it, because every year it's his fields. He knows them, but he knows them like the back of his palm.
And so his compensation is what commensurate with that.
The palm of his hand or the back of his hand. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
So I'm saying his compensation then would be more than a picker, or all has to be standardized?
Yeah, everything, you can see they publicize, a lot of the Otzer Bezdins even publicize their cheshbonos, how they assessed the value, and you can sometimes see how much they're paying the different people involved. So he's not making money like he makes a regular year, definitely not, but he's not losing, he's at least not losing money, and because he has to water the trees to keep them alive, that costs him money. So here also that water is able to be paid for, because now you also benefited from the fact that the trees were kept alive. He's allowed to charge you for that water. So that goes in. All those different things go into the cheshbon of Bezdin. I've been sitting on some of these types of cheshbonos, and they sit down and they go through all the types of things. Usually, a good Otzer Bezdin, I'm going to give you an example, something which is more processed, wine or olive oil. So a good Otzer Bezdin wine will come out to about half the price of what it would cost on a non-Shemitah year. And it's be'erich proportionate to any type of wine. In other words, if it was an expensive wine, so there was more care given to all the different tachanot, stations along the process of the winemaking, whether it was which grapes were harvested, and how they were harvested, hand harvested, machine harvested, all sorts of different things like that. And that's all going to affect the quality of the ultimate wine. Usually it comes out to about half the value of the wine on a regular year. Same thing with the olive oil. We found that it usually came out to between a third to a half of the price. So, listen, I can't answer for all the Otzer Bezdins. I mean, people tell me, but that's not true. Last year, and then people start giving me all sorts of excuses. The excuses sound very nice, but if the cheshbon doesn't work, we won't allow such things. It doesn't. If somehow you end up with a cheshbon that comes out more expensive, so something's wrong somewhere in the process, and we say, we just can't work on the project.
How many of the farms or agricultural places in Israel are dati that you say, yeah, go ahead?
I'm not sure yet what's going to be the Shemitah. The last Shemitah there were a lot more because the Rabbanut Rashid pushed Otzer Bezdin, a Tov Lamutav, as they say here, as good for the bad. And this year they're not pushing Otzer Bezdin. If anything, they're actually pushing Dafka at the Mechira, which we'll discuss momentarily.
Won't that affect the price? It's like if we're relying on dati farmers to say, yeah, feel free, take my field, and to subscribe to the whole process.
Yes and no. I'll explain to you because you need this customer base. You need to be able to have an effective Otzer Bezdin. Whereas right now, one of the things that a lot of the Otzer Bezdins, a lot of the B'nai Dinim that have such services are trying to evaluate right now is who is their consumer base for this forthcoming Shemitah. How many people are going to buy, because then they know how many farmers they can say, okay, we're willing to distribute your fruit, because if you have too many fruit and you're not going to be able to sell it, so it's not fair to the farmer, it's not fair to anybody, because then they end up doing all the work and they end up not getting anything in return. So it's a more complex system that every level feeds into each other. So it has to do with the consumer basis, it has to do with the farmer basis, it has to do with the abilities of the Bezdin to be mifakech, to supervise the whole process. It's a complex system. Heter Mechiro is probably the biggest system that's used to circumvent Shemitah. And that's as follows. As we mentioned before, according to many of the Rishonim and Achrayim, non-Jewish grown produce, if it's produce grown in non-Jewish owned land, doesn't have Kedusha Shmita. Now, according to most opinions, even on non-Jewish land, a Jew isn't allowed to do work on the property. Because it's still a Karka Eretz Yisrael, it's still halachically Israeli land. It's just not owned by a Jew. So a Jew shouldn't be working that land still.
Who decides what's non-Jewish owned land? Medina? And do we pass him by Taba or we pass him by...
Okay, so I'm going to get to that soon. I'm going to somewhat get to that soon. And that's as follows. So now, the idea behind Heter Mechira is that you wholesale land to a non-Jew. And at that point in time, so now it's non-Jewish owned land, so the product doesn't have Kedusha Shvius to it. And so you can sell it, you can buy it, it's as if there's no Shemitah halachos whatsoever for such produce. Now there are halachos that are going to be nogeya for the rabbanut and for the farmers, etc., because the farmers themselves, because they're Jews, they can't do the work on the land, so they're only going to be able to have non-Jews do the work on the land, at least the malachos, the oraisa, the biblically prohibited malachos. Maybe the rabbinic, the halachos that were prohibited by the rabbis might be, yes, okay for them to do, but a lot of the work is going to have to be done by non-Jews.
Is it controversial law? If they can't do it, then they're allowed to ask for it before them? That's part of the controversy?
Sorry?
Is it part of the controversy?
Amir La'akum isn't so much of a controversy unless it would be Jewish owned land, or or if the guy's doing it only for the sake of Jews. There is such a question. The Chazon Ish had such a tzad that if the whole malacha was being done for Jews, then maybe it was a din of Amir Lakum and Shmita also. Midir Rabbanon. But it's already a little bit convoluted because Amir Lakum and Shabbos is only din Rabbanon. So Chazal forbade all the malachos of Shabbos for during Shmita. But to say that Chazal forbade all the malachos that were even only malachos derabbanan, like Amir Lakum and Shabbos for Shmita, is already a little bit more complex. But there are such opinions. But the Chazon Ish had all sorts of issues with Heter Mechira. He said now one of the biggest issues is, are you allowed to sell land in Eretz Yisrael? So the Gemara says you're not allowed to sell land in Eretz Yisrael to a non-Jew. So how does it start? Right? It's Lo Sechanim, it's a pasuk in the Torah, and the Gemara tells us that that's one of the Isurim that's a Nichlal in Lo Sechanim, that you can't sell land in Eretz Yisrael to a non-Jew. So how do you go about that? So really because of that, the original Heter Mechira, as it's referred to now, that wasn't the first time that happened, but what the Rabbanut Rashit is still going in accordance to was one that was made by the Kavod Rav, the Chacham Inspector, in the late 1800s, and that there was really a lease. It wasn't a sale. The question is, does a lease turn it into non-Jewish owned land? Now that goes back to now how do you define who owns it? So actually there was, I had a discussion once with a company that wanted to make. He said, they won't use Heter Mechira, but they'll sell it a whole year before and buy it back a whole year afterwards. 3-year sale. So it's not just for. So I told her, what are you going to do about Lo Sechanim over there? That's because they're the whole. Those that are proponents of the Heter Mechira will tell you that there's no problem with Lo Sechanim because it's being done for the purpose of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, so that Jews should be able to live here, and we have what to eat during Shemitah, and a Jewish farmer shouldn't lose his parnasa, and that we shouldn't be mefarnes the Arabs because their money is going to go straight to terrorism, and whatever else it is, all those types of things. So because of that, we need Heter Mechira, so we're allowed to sell it to an Arab again, usually, so we're allowed to sell it to a non-Jew, and that way everything continues as normal. So that's good for 1 year, but what about 3 years? So then you can say, okay, but if I need to sell for 3 years, so it shouldn't just be a Heter Mechira, but it should be more of a real sale. I'm selling it before, I'm not buying it back immediately afterwards. So it's not, it doesn't work like that. It's just some sort of halachic trick or something like that. So then maybe you can say, okay, so then it's still fine. But it becomes more and more complex at that point. But the real question I said was, who does the land belong to? Now, most land in Israel, most farmland belongs to something which is called the Minhal, which means it really belongs to the Medina. And the Medina sublets it to farmers for the purpose of farming. So if it's Minhal land, it's not so simple for them to sell it. Who said you can really sell it to a non-Jew? It's not yours. It's the Medina gave it to you, and then you're subletting. So so I said, can you register such a sale with the Minhal? Now the question is, so why does that work?
So the secular law causes a halachic problem.
For sure. Now the reason why secular law causes a halachic problem, I want to explain something in all of Choshen Mishpat, and it's very important, and also the shas that come up. Sometimes in this kishreinim, things that come up between, dispute between two neighbors on a property matter, things that come up sometimes in stores with return policies and things like that. Most of the halachos in Choshen Mishpat, in monetary areas of halacha, at the end of the Siman in Shulchan Aruch, it discusses any set of halachas. It says, "V'akol lefi minhag haMedina," and everything's in accordance to the way it's done in the Medina, not din d'malchus hadina. But because what happens when I do something, it's also very nagei car accidents, right? Because you can have a lot of fun in lumdus about who's responsible in a different car accident or whatever, because there's grummas and there's grummas, there's things, it's not an indirect cause and not a direct cause, they stopped short, so he wanted, but what happens is when the second you get into a car, you have insurance, you took a license test, everybody has in their mind that they're subjecting themselves right now to whatever is the law in the state that you're driving in. You know, you get into an accident, so it's not, well, I'm not going to say, well, if it's a from guy, so yeah, it's true that he rear-ended me, but because I stopped short, so it's my fault because I was gairim that he would go into me. You don't start getting into such things, because we know that whoever rear-ends is responsible and not the one who was rear-ended. That's accepted worldwide in driving laws. So there's not much to talk about it. And there's right-of-ways when you come to, it's not necessarily always the way it would be right-of-way in halachic, in the halachic world. But you've accepted that set of rules when you go on the road, and that becomes something, so you can't start driving now and say, well, sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that. It depends what the other type of driver is. Is he wearing a kippah? Is he not? What kind of kippah? What? It doesn't work that way. It's plain and simple that I've accepted a certain set of laws. So it's the same thing with property ownership. You've accepted a certain set of laws. When I buy property in the country and all that type of stuff, I agree that I'm buying it with the way everybody buys it here, and that's with tabu, and it's with this, it's with that. So it has to be, it's the only way to go about property laws. Now, in the law in Israel, it says for heter mechira, it doesn't have to be a sale that's registered because it's done only for a year to get out of this whole Shmita problem. So that's one of the things that some people have a bigger issue with is, well, you see that even in the law, it's written as being not a real sale. So that even though the law accepts it that as a sale, it's accepted as a not a real sale. So it gets a little bit complex, and that's one of the issues.
On a halachic basis, what kind of Gemir's das do you have, or what kind of kinyan? You're selling it to one Arab, that land that's worth billions of, it's not.
So there are systems to get around it. It's the same thing as Mechiras Chametz and everything. There are ways to get around it. So the RP, Rabbi Soloveitchik, didn't like not Mechiras Chametz, and not the Gra already was had certain issues with Mechiras Chametz, at least how it was done in his days. Again, a lot of things have progressed nowadays. There's a lot of fancy Mechiros for Mechiras Chametz. Somebody this year, happens almost every year. In the last Shlavim, especially, I do two Mechiras. I do a Mechiras Yud Gimel and Mechiras Yud Daled. Right? Yud Gimel, for people who are going away because it's a shayla, it could be that if you don't own the chametz on the 14th already, so you don't have a chiyuv to do bedikas chametz, because when the chiyuv of bedikas chametz is chal, you already have no chametz that belongs to you. If people understood that, good. If not, it's an aside, so we won't get to it. So that Mechira, I always have people who are coming like mamish last minute. To do the mechira, they remember. I can't wait till it's night because I have to do my bedikas chametz when it's nightfall. So I have to do it, and then also they would be chayav. So I have to do it beforehand. And there's always people who come, mamish right after mincha and that type of thing. So my guy walked in right as there were still people there. So they were floored. They were amazed to see the whole process how it goes. I had a lawyer there, and I had Eidim and contracts and all sorts of different things flying back and forth, all sorts of kinyanim. He took some of the chametz with him. He got a key and locked up one of the cupboards in my house. It was all sorts of different things that was going on there. They were all very impressed to see all of it. So there are all sorts of things that you can make it always improve exactly how it's done and have more of a gemiras das and make it into more of a kinyan and a legally binding kinyan, which at that point, if it's really legally binding and the guy really can stand up in a court of law or in a bezdin and say it's really mine. So Gemiras das ahin, Gemiras das aher.
You get some billions of dollars from the one where Arab Muslims keep going with it.
So in theory, if it's done as a complete sale, so that's why that's part of the idea. Again, also at least alleviate some of these types of issues. Just because the hour is late, we started 5 minutes late, so we can go for a few more minutes. But so that's one issue. Another issue with Heter Mechira was the Chazon Ish said, because if it's us to sell it, so once it's sold, it works, but you're not allowed to sell it. So he said, well, that means that you can't have the Rabbanut doing the sale for you because that's a Shliach D'var Aveira, but ain't Shliach D'var Aveira. So last Shmita actually, Heter Mechira was done for the Rabbanut Rashid by Rav Vittman from Tenuva. So he did it that everybody gave their property back to the Minhal, and he had the Minhal come and actually do the Mechira, so that even if it's an Aveira, and ain't shliach d'var aveira, but the minhal did the mechira. Now, the truth of the matter is the minhal is not an individual, so it's not an individual aveira. It becomes some sort of corporate aveira or something like that. But it's
white collar.
So that's the.
Did they actually sell the karka, or is it just the top shelf?
So there's also that's another way around maybe that you're not really selling karkas Eretz Yisrael. It's all, again, in Lumdus there's all sorts of finite points that are taken into account, and everybody comes to try to tweak it this way, try to tweak it that way, everybody with their mabat, with their vantage point on it. They try to perfect it this way and that way, and every Shemitah it's always done a little bit differently because somebody comes and says, no, he did it all wrong, and really he missed the boat, and it should be done that. So it's always done slightly differently, and so we can't even talk about how it's going to be done this Shemitah because they haven't fully decided how certain of these points are going to be taken care of in this forthcoming Shemitah. Now there are those. So most people who would rely on Heter Mechira would say that it's like a din nachri, and they would view nachri as not having kedusha shvius. So it's a complete circumvention of all of the Shemitah things. So even if it does work, it could be you wouldn't want to use it because I want to eat kedusha shvius. That's another point. Now, Svicha is something very important which we must discuss, and it's as follows. Chazal made a gzeira, a rabbinic enactment, on sapichin. Eis kol sviach hasada, the herbs that grow wildly in the field. It's not limited just to herbs. Most vegetables are included in the Isser of Svicha. And Svicha are as follows. If I let you pick, whatever, the Torah lets people pick herbs and vegetables that grew wildly this year. So it's not like fruit that grew on a tree that I know you didn't plant the tree this year if you already have fruit that you can pick. It's something which is usually planted in close proximity to when it's picked. So it becomes a thing. If everybody's picking it and they have an Otzer Bezdin or whatever it is, there's no way to control that people aren't actually going to plant this process, which is the malacha da iraisa. It's biblically prohibited. So there's no way to be able to be certain that people aren't doing it. When there were a lot of people that did start planting because they said nobody's going to know the difference that I threw out seeds now and planted in the middle of Shemitah, because also these things grow easily. It's not the same type of sowing. It's not like planting a tree that you have to bury the right amount. You have to take the right type of care, and it grows slowly or whatever it is. It grows nice and quick. You threw it on the ground, and tomorrow it's here, and there's no way of knowing whether it was from last year, whether it was from seeds that I threw down now, whether it was from seeds that fell from the flowers last year. I remember we had flowers in my yard when we were growing up as a kid, that they reseeded themselves every year from the seeds that came out from the old flowers as they shriveled up and dried out. And every year, not only did they grow back, but they grew back in a greater abundance, more and more and more every year. And so there's no way to be able to differentiate between what was natural regrowth and what was planted now, bedafka. So Chazal said, such produce that grows so quickly, it's planted now for a few months from now, for some point of time during this year, they said that is a din of sfichin, which we're not going to let you use no matter what, even if you didn't plant it, even if it's from pre-shvius, or even if it's from things that seeded themselves, we're not going to let you eat it, and therefore it complicates things even more when it comes to vegetables during Shemitah. So for that, there's one system that has circumvented issues of Shemitah in Eretz Yisrael, which is called matzah menutak. Matzah menutak means literally a separated surface. I'm growing things not on the ground. If I have plants in my house, I think one of the topics for one of the forthcoming shiurim is going to be the home garden. One of them is going to be more of a tachlis, what to do in your kitchen, what to do in your, with things, how do you buy things, etc. All those types of shas that come up. But so if you have plants inside your house, it's not outside. So it doesn't have a din of karka Eretz Yisrael, the ground of Eretz Yisrael. It's in my house. Now, if it's on my merpeset, on my balcony outside, that already has a whole different halachos, because it might not be maining directly, it might not get its nutrients directly from the ground, but it gets from the air, it gets from the ground, all sorts of things like that. It sounds a little bit long distance, but nonetheless, it's not in a controlled environment. So because of that, it has a din of, yes, being potato shoots, but if I grow it mamish inside my house, so it's not going to be shvus.
So greenhouse is the same thing?
So also, a greenhouse is the same thing except for like this. If I have a greenhouse and I planted it in the ground, so it doesn't help that I built a roof around it and walls around it and everything else. It's in the ground. So it has to be grown on a raised surface, so to speak, which is all sorts of different ways that they do that. Sometimes it's like a PVC tub. It's basically like a semi-hard PVC sheet that they roll out, they fold up the corners, it creates a long tub, they put things on the side to keep it straight, and they fill it up with dirt, which is actually used very often during non-Shemitah years. Why? Because what's one of the ideas of growing things in a greenhouse? The rainforest effect. That the water from the greenhouse, it goes up and it kind of evaporates into the air, and the greenhouses are so hot. When I went around some of the greenhouses to check about some of the Shemitah things, I asked them, how many casualties do you have here? I was like, I didn't understand how you can stand in, like, I barely survived being there enough time to like look at the techniques, how they're growing and what they're doing or whatever it was, and let alone understand how people are working there from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. But you know,
Also
they told
keeps
me
insects out. It keeps
what?
Insects out.
Fries whatever insects come. It's unbelievably hot, unbelievably hot. I walked out drenched. It's something. It's an experience in of itself. Part of the whole idea is that the water that evaporates stays there, so you have the moisture still there. So one of the things that enhances that effect is that the ground doesn't even absorb any of the water. How do you do that? You put something in a tub, so then the water stays in the dirt because the dirt's isolated. It can't go further and further down, dissipate further and further into the ground. It stays within that gush, that clump of soil that's in these PVC tubs. So that's one of the more common methods, but you need a lot of hashgacha on that, because you have to make sure that it doesn't get holes, because if it gets holes, then it's again, the whole PVC tub, it's huge. That one hole in the middle makes the whole thing connected to the ground. And it can't be buried into the ground, it has to be fully separated from the ground. And then there are those opinions that say, since things are growing like that all the time, and you can't lift these things off the ground because they're so heavy, they're filled with soil, it's more than our bottom saw, all those types of things like that. When we discuss this at great length, I'll explain all those more finite details a little bit clearer. So they said that maybe it has a problem and it's still considered like the ground because that's how you grow things in the ground every year. The pashtus says that it's fine and that it does work. And then hydroponics are even better because it's really totally removed from the ground. It's not the conventional way of growing. It's not totally unconventional, but it's not the more common way of growing. It's more expensive. It's more. I mean, they claim that they save money, all sorts of things, but it's a very expensive technology, and it's. So there it's totally above the ground, it's not in dirt, it's in water, so there's all sorts of other aspects to be able to, so such things become okay to use during Shemitah. That's really the only way that you can have produce that's grown in Israel without using the Otzar, without using Heter Mechira, that's going to allow you to eat vegetables grown in Israel by Jews during Shemitah. So that's the background for now, and Bez Hashem, in the forthcoming Shurim, we'll discuss.
When is the next one?
I think Sunday and then Wednesday.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.